Hi, this is 365801, and this is a 2023 year in BL review video, and this is where I specifically look at my DNFs of 2023. So I did this video last year where I looked at some DNFs, and I have to say I was pretty lax in 2023 about actually recording things that I was DNFing. There are some very definite DNFs. There are some soft DNFs, the DNFs for now. And on my Goodreads, the best way to actually see if I have something that I've DNF'd is to look at my currently reading section, which is what's on the screen just now. I have some currently reading, which also includes the previous year. So you'll be able to see some of the ones from last year, which are still on there. I haven't taken them away. I'm still keeping them as currently reading. Because some of them I'm like, you read so much of that. Maybe you'll go back. Maybe you won't. I do kind of have this thing about DNFing. I want to be more concise about my DNFing. So I want to DNF more when a book isn't for me. And I want to be more confident about my DNFing in terms of DNFing within maybe 5-10% of a book, rather than what I have done in the past and what I've done this year is reading like 50% of a book before or more before I actually give up and say nah, or I just forget about it and then end up reading something else and then going, oh yeah, you were in the middle of that, weren't you? And never going back to it. And that's sometimes what happens. DNFing doesn't necessarily mean the book is bad or that the author is bad or anything like that. It just means that the book didn't gel with me at that point in time when I was reading it. And that might mean that I go back to it and I gel with it at a different time. But I also have to think about, you DNF'd for a reason. And also that probably is a good reason. Anyway, on the screen right now, we have quite a few things. And some of them are continuing reads. They are things that I am currently reading. So for example, I added in again Steel Under Silk because I have it up here as well from last year because I'm still reading it. And I wanted to make sure because there was a big break. It was on like hiatus for a bit. And then Snob came back with the second part of season 1, which she originally said in one of her creator's notes that season 1 was only supposed to be a few chapters. And I'm like, no, this is still ongoing. And I love it. Keep going. And also, I think you can say from this one here, hero versus villain. This was the last one, Making Waves for 2022. This was the first one for 2023. And there's a whole thing that I need to discuss because I had a kind of idea for videos or for my reading. It wasn't really for videos because you guys don't know any of this. But I had this idea that I was going to just read whatever I came across on Instagram or Twitter or Threads now, I guess, any social media. If something came up, anything popped up and I was like, oh, that looks interesting, read it. That was my plan, was to just read random things, to be on a reading adventure. And I did go on a reading adventure, which is why there's so many things on here that's like currently reading, because I started, I just didn't finish. There's an awful lot of reading adventure stuff at the start of the year, and then that fell by the wayside. I was going to do a whole year thing of it, and I haven't. I've just let all that go. But we can talk about it now in the DNFs, because some of them are definite DNFs. So yeah, let's talk about the first things. I'm going to just let each of the DNFs just stand as they are, and I will let you know why they're DNFs. The first one is hero versus villain. Now, I came across something on Instagram. Someone did a reel quite early on in the year, and they had some really fantastic webcomic webtoon artwork in the reel, and one of the visual images had some of the characters from this work, but I didn't know what it was. And of course, when I went into the comments, people were also like, where's that hot guy with the blonde hair? Like, what's he in? And is it BL? And someone was like, oh yeah, it's this is the webtoon version. But if you go to Wattpad, you can actually read the like book version of it. So I ended up going to Wattpad and reading a substantial amount of hero versus villain. In fact, I think I read about 45 to 50% of what's available on Wattpad. And it's not like I didn't enjoy it. I kind of did. And I don't know why I stopped, but it just wasn't really hitting after a lot. It felt very fan fictiony. But it's just, like there's a hero and the villain, and they're both, hotties, and they have the hots for each other. And that's about all I can remember, other than being like, oh, this is fine. But then it kind of got to a certain point at the 48% mark, where something was happening, and I was like, I'm going to put this down and I'm going to go read something else. So it's kind of a soft DNF, because from what I remember, I had a good time. I just don't think it's something, if I had ploughed through to the end, I think I would have had a better time. But someone did say the writing does get better as you go on. But yeah, so it's on Wattpad if you want to go. I had to log into Wattpad again. It's been about a year. And they were like, yeah, you're like 48% of the way into this. So yeah, this is something that I definitely think I could have continued, and I probably would have had a good time. It would have been down as a read. Now, this then leads me on to something else that I saw on Instagram, or YouTube or something, and it was this awful, awful adverts. The ones like the Galatea ones and stuff like that. I do have a couple of those apps on my phone now, because I was on a reading adventure, and one of them was Alpha Asher by Jane Doe, who, this is like the, anonymous by a lady. Yeah, so this is what the Lola one with her boyfriend Alpha Tyler. Ugh. Yeah, no, I don't really remember too much about it. Like she goes back home and the Alpha isn't the same Alpha, it's a different guy, and he's like gruff. I think I read about 16 chapters of this. And that leads me on to a couple of other things, like on Galatea or on other websites like that. And I did end up reading two other MF, I know, MF, werewolf shiftery paranormal romance ones. One was super long, it's like 800 chapters. And I think I read about 300, but I had to like check and be like, hold on, wait a minute, there's like 800 chapters and I'm this far into this, and I have no idea what it's called. I have no memory of what it's actually called. But it was horrendous, and it was repetitive, because it was like one of those you have to get a new chapter up type things, and so it was getting like over the top. The one that I really distinctly remember though, that was like the 800 chapter one, was about a girl who was seeing a guy, and it was like a contract, of course, and then like he stopped the contract, and she was like, yeah, that's fine with me, and he was like, what? And then it turns out that there's all these different like werewolf clans and stuff, and one of the clan's new alphas is her ex-boyfriend from when they were kids, but he has no memory of what happened with her because he was in an accident, and then the other people in the clan lied to him, and he ends up, spoiler alert, he ends up dying anyway. And I was like, what? That was the point where you lost me at love. I was like, no, he was a good guy. Like, he was a dick, but he was also a bit of a good guy. And then there was her friend, and then it turns out like there's like a sister or something, and the sister helped save her, and there was a whole thing about a background where she didn't know, like maybe she was being experimented on. I don't know, it was ridiculous, and I was like, had enough, no thank you. But I didn't even put that on because I don't think there is actually a Goodreads for it, because it's one of those absolutely trashy things. But I did read that a lot of that, but I had to at a certain point say, no, I'm DNFing this, so I'm leaving this alone. So yeah, if we go on to some other ones, back to here. So I did end up adding a few other things, like this one here, which I think is like the Jinx one. Rabujind Jinxu. I don't know, Love Jinx? Something like that. So that's an ongoing one. I'm leaving them on my currently reading because technically I am, like, I've started reading the first couple of chapters. Payback as well. This is like the light novel version, I think, but obviously there's the lesson version. And I did read a little bit of Whose Baby Is It? And obviously, this came back, Steel Under Silk. And then this was, I have no idea what this was. I have no idea what that is. But I was obviously like looking at the chapters. And then there's this one here, Assorted Wildness. Like I have to go and look out all of these different apps and stuff. And I'm just like, no, make it easy for me. I'm too old. I'm too old for all of these apps. But yeah, so there's a lot of things on there that I wouldn't say I've DNF'd. I've just started, and therefore they are on my currently reading. Because this isn't my DNF shelf. I put them all on my DNF shelf after I've made this video. So then we're going to move on to one that I think it was in March, April or March. And this is one that's a bit disappointing for me, if I'm honest. And that is Fool Me Once by Ariana Nash. Because I was super, super excited to get a NetGalley copy of this, and I have not finished reading it. And the thing is, it's not bad. I just think it's super, super long. And I was like, okay, I must be like halfway through now. And I was like, 20% in. What? And then I read some more and I was like, okay, so you're definitely like 60-70% away in. Like, no, 40% in. I was like, what? And it just kept going on and on and on. I think, how far did I get into Fool Me Once? 44% of the way in before I was like, okay. And I think that's the point. Like, it was split into certain like section 1, section 2 type things. And I think everyone really liked this. And in fact, I think everyone liked Fool Me Twice better. It was about a guy who was like undercover, a jester in a court, and like a sexy court. Sexy court jester. Yeah, so this book's about a sexy court jester. And like assassins and stuff, and yeah, I got less than half of the way through, and it felt like I had read 3-4 books. There was just so much going on, and yet nothing happened. They were all still at the party. It was just one big party. Oh, yeah, so Fool Me Once. I really wanted to love it because everyone loves Ariana Nash, and I have not read any Ariana Nash before. This was my first one. And Court of Pain, people really, really liked. They especially liked Fool Me Twice. So I really do feel like this is, I'm not going to say a soft DNF, because I hard DNF'd this. Because I had other things to do in life, life's too short. But I really feel like I want to go back and actually give it another go, because it's not like I didn't enjoy what I read. I just didn't stick around for the rest of it. And that's sad, because I was really hoping I would. And it was a, fantasy adventure. And I'm like, yay, great. So this is, 44% of the way through a book. And I have just been like, nah, I'm good. And that's not great. So yeah, I'd like to know, is it worth me going back to Fool Me Once? If you have read Fool Me Once or Fool Me Twice, if you've read Ariana Nash, let me know. I just feel like this was a lot of investment, a lot of pages, a lot of investment and time for the fact that I gave it up. So yeah, I feel bad about it. It's got a really high average rating though, isn't that good? That's good. Let's go on to the next one. I feel like I need to finish this though. I do feel like I need to finish this. Right, okay, here is something I'm really kind of disappointed about. So people were going on about Cole McCade as being a good one to read, and I have had some recommendations. The Criminal Intentions? Criminal something like that. The long-running series. And I think that's a Cole McCade one. And his Cocky Valet was available on Audible, and so I started listening to it on Audible. And I got really quite far into it. I'm thinking it's like super long. And I have like only 2.5 hours left of the audiobook. So I got quite far in. Let me just check. Yeah, I think it's like super, super long. I would say 75%. 75% of the way into his Cocky Valet. Yeah. Not great. I was just so bored. And And I 75% of the way into a book, and it was just like, enough already. Also, I'm not really a big fan of daddies. I don't like I kind of feel like I've got to that stage where I'm not really, unless Lynn Van Dorn is doing this, I'm not into it. It's gotta be Lynn Van Dorn, or give me Lynn Van Dorn or give me death. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of the whole daddy thing. It's not my jam. It's not my favorite. So the older man who's like looking after the young multi-billionaire, Jesus, no thank you. There was like nothing for me to relate to at all, and I just didn't feel like carrying on, even though there was 70, yeah, only 25% left. Nope. Nope. Big fat nope. Okay, the next one is also a little bit worrying for me because it's an Onley James, and this is my first try at Onley James. Everyone loves Onley James. Everyone tells me read Onley James, and I gave the first book in the Elite Protection Services series, Intoxicating, a go. And having said just 2 seconds ago that I do not like daddies, you can see why I probably did not do very well with this. I think I got about 30% of the way into this. And also, once again, spoiled rich twink and, you know, the daddy figure just doesn't do it for me. So it's a big fat no. I mean, in a way, it's good because I've discovered that's not something that I'm going to enjoy reading unless it's Lynn Van Dorn. That's just how it is. I don't even think Lynn Van Dorn does very many. I don't think she does like super rich kids and yeah. No, no, no. I don't think she does. No. So yeah, no, daddies are not for me. And spoiled rich twinks and protective daddies, not my thing. So this was a big fat no. I kept on being like, oh, for God's sake, couldn't get with the dialogue, couldn't get with the characters. It was just really boring. I was like, so like, no. Which makes me very worried because everyone has always been like going on about Onley James and how much they recommend the Necessary Evil series, and that's really great. But I have discovered something about myself, and that is that rich, entitled, broken twinks with broken protective daddies is not something that I enjoy. So hopefully that's not the case in Necessary Evils. I know it's all about like psychopaths and stuff. So I don't know. We shall see. We shall see. But yes, this was an Only James that I'm like, no thank you. And no thank you at a good point. It was like 30%. I'm like, that's enough. And I think that's what I need to do. Like keep a strict schedule on my reading and like a check-in. Are you enjoying this at 10% in? Are you enjoying this at 20% in? And if you're not, just don't read it. Just stop. Move on to something else. There's far too many books in the world for me to keep reading something else. Okay, so we're moving on to the next one, which is where I really am like, oh no, oh no. This is Book Lover. This is part of the Vino and Veritas series. This is book number 6. Now, I already DNF'd a book last year, I think it was. That was it this year? Or was it last year? Hold on a second. Did I read them all this year or just last year as well? Yeah, I don't think I talked about this at all. And this was definitely this year. So in 2023, Audible put a lot of the Vino and Veritas books up on as part of their premium service. So you could read a lot of them, and I read like the first one was like the Serena Bowen one, and then I tried this one, which was number 2 was Heartscape Garrett Lee. That I did not get very far into, maybe 10-15% away in. Well done. Not for me. Stopped it right sharpish. It was the narration that was really not doing it for me. But then when I thought about what the actual story was about, I was like, I don't know, I don't care. And so I moved on to the next one, and moved on to the next one, and the next one. And there was quite a few, because obviously is there like an Eden Finley one, which was like a hockey guy and things like that. So there was a few in there that I enjoyed. If we go back to the Book Lover one, this was number 6, so this is J.E. Burke. And I would have to say like 80% of the way through this. Pretty far in. There we go. I had 80%, I would say. I got 80%. I had 1 hour and 35 minutes left of this. Oh dear. And that's way too long to go into a book and to just be like, oh no. And what was this about? Oh, it was the dairy farmer guy. Yeah, I was just like, no. I got to, what was it, like the third act conflict? And I was like, no, I've had it, no. Just not doing this. No, it's not. I'm not here for this. Give me good, or just get out of my ears. It was very much like that, like throwing my headphones across the room, like no, not doing this. So yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the Vino Veritas ones, I was like, I'm not interested. Just no. They're like small town, easy reading type ones, but a lot of it was repetitive in the same kind of setup because it was like they hadn't actually talked to each other. They'd all just been given the same brief, and then like one person goes, "Oh, hey, can you mention this character? This is what they look like, or this is what they do." Or hey, can you set it at this place? Or can you do it like that? Like this is the college that they're at. And it was just they ended up repeating themselves a bit with same kind of characters. Except for one that was like an undercover cop one, which was weird. But yeah, so I did read a few that I might talk about in another video. So yeah, I did read Heartscape as well, or at least the first 10-15% of it, and I was like, no, not having that either. Then we move on to another one that I'm a little bit disappointed about because I started it. I did get quite a bit into it, not massively. And this is Anna Szabo, and this is Takeover. This is number 1. So I didn't get too far in. I think I only listened to about 45 minutes of it. And I just wasn't feeling it at that point in time. So this is one of those kind of a soft DNF. But I don't want to go back to it for a couple of years. I feel like if it's not for me at this moment in time, or at least in 2023, it's probably not going to be for me in 2024. I'm going to need a few years to go back to something that I've DNF'd, because I DNF'd it for a reason. I do have to remember that. But yeah, this is about a guy who sleeps with another guy and then turns out, well, we work together. Oh. So it's one of those kind of stories, which I thought sounded really good. And the first part of it was really fun and entertaining, hence the reason I listened to the first 45 minutes of it. But as soon as they actually got to the whole working together bit, I was like, nah. I got bored. And I was like, no, it's not hitting. It's not giving me the dopamine. And sometimes that's the other thing. Like if I reread so much in 2023 purely because I needed something to give me that serotonin, that dopamine hit. And a lot of the new books just weren't doing it. And unfortunately, that's why they're DNFs. So I feel like this has more to do with my mental health and state of mind than it does the actual book itself. So it's not like it's a hard DNF, but it's certainly a DNF for a couple of years and then go back to it at a later date. So yeah, it's on the back burner, but we'll see if I ever actually return. Another one that's like really quite an odd one because it's got nothing to do with male romance, and that is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Now I have a hardback copy of this. No, it's a softback. It's a paperback. It's fine. I felt really bad for a second there. I was like, no, it's just paperback. It's cool. I started reading it as part of Summer Ween, and I could not get into this. Now, the reason I started reading this is because I actually have the Dead and the Dark Water, or the Dark and the Dead. I don't know, something like that. It's whatever Stuart Turton's other book is that is 84 years old. Or at least that's what it makes you feel. It's, I think, 700 pages or something. It's super long. It's probably the longest thing I read in 2023. And oh my god, when I say I should have filmed myself reading that just so I could watch myself back and laugh because of the extreme emotion I had with the last, say, 50-60 pages of that book. I swear I almost threw it across the room, almost tore it in half. I was so close to just like bidding it with like, fuck you book, fuck you, really big fuck you book energy right at the end of that one. But it kind of pulled it, pulled it along right at the end. Not in any great way. I still don't think it's a good book, but it was good enough for me to go, okay, I'll give this one a go. And I got bored really quickly because it's the same story being told by different perspectives, but with the same person inside each of the perspectives. And I was like, oh, no. So I got bored really fast. So I kind of wanted to give it a go just for the Stuart Turton of it all, but then I also am like, you really hated that book actually, and the only thing that you liked about it was the fact that it was kind of like a queer, but not queer. Like Stuart Turton wasn't writing the characters queer, but in my mind they were queer, sort of like Sherlock Holmes and Watson, but make it 1600s and set on a boat. And that's kind of my jam. I was like living for the queerness that I was reading into the story that didn't actually exist. Maybe it did exist, but it certainly definitely did exist in my mind, and that was what made it entertaining, which is why when the end came I was like, meh. But the 7.5 Deaths, I'm like, that can be a DNF. I still have it. I have the book, but I will probably just donate it to a charity shop or something. So on to this one, which is my second to last one, and I'll talk about a couple others as well. Heir to Thorn and Flame. Now, I am super disappointed about this one. This is, I don't want to do a rant video. But Ben Alderson has been really big for a few years since, Lord of Eternal Night came out, and I hadn't read any Ben Alderson, and everyone said read Lord of Eternal Night, you'll love it, and I still think maybe I will. But then he came out with some new stuff and it got put on NetGalley, and I was like, oh, maybe Heir to Thorn and Flame should be my first Ben Alderson and I'll give it a go. So I got the ebook version of it and I started trying to read it, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to get through this without an audiobook. And it just so happened that the audiobook version got posted up on NetGalley. So I was like, great. And I got accepted. So I was like, yes. So I can read it now. And I put the audiobook version on, and I don't think it did any good whatsoever. In fact, I think it made me angry. How to do this? Okay, so this is super long. How many pages in this? 484. There is no earthly reason for this book to be that fucking long. Oh my god. So I thought I was about 50% of the way through. No, 20. I was like, this is Fool Me Once all over again. And it really is. It really, really is. I DNF'd this at 58%. 58% of the way through. And that's with the help of the audiobook. So I got ill. I started listening to this. So I hate to say this. I did my Instagram chooses my next 5-star read video in August. And I had a great time. I read 2 books. One was great. One was very competently done. That was also very good. And then I thought, great, well, this will be the next one, because that was what came up. The Instagram, roulette wheel chose Ben Alderson. So I was like, okay. So I started reading it in August. And I was still trying to read it at the end of October. Like, I have to just call time of death, October 2023. I was like, all of these other books that I wanted to read, all of these other manga that I wanted to read, all of this other stuff that I wanted to do, and I was investing time and energy and effort into not reading this book because it was driving me up the wall. I think the book itself is overly long and overly written. I think it feels way too... I know this sounds bad, but YA, it sounds too young adult. The writing is very young adult, and I'm too old for that shit. Also, the narrator, he sounds like he's from Essex. Like, maybe he's not from Essex, and if you're not British, you don't know what Essex means. but they kind of talk a bit like that. lockdown in Essex. I don't want to be disparaging about people from Essex, but the guy sounds like he's a modern contemporary voice, and he's the narrator of this fantasy, and so it just sounds like a bit jarring to have someone who has such quite a a contemporary sounding voice doing a fantasy, and the voice that he puts on for the main character makes him sound like a whiny little bitch, and I want to slap him. And I don't like it when the main character is someone that you dislike strongly, not for any reason other than they're a whiny little bitch that needs a good slap. Oh my god, I really don't want to say I hated it, but I kind of hated it. So yeah, Heir Heir to Thorn and Flame is super long, and I only got 58% of the way through over a over 2 month period of trying to read it, and it put me into a book, slump. I wasn't reading, I was ill, I wasn't having a good time, so that might have contributed, but I think over 2 months worth of time should have been enough for me to have completed this, and it didn't, and it threw off all of my other videos for my male romance and prose for the rest of the year. So I blame it on Heir to Thorn and Flame. So I didn't get the other books out because I just had to read them. I just couldn't vlog them. I couldn't make other content about it. I just stopped. It just was like, I was too busy. I had other things doing, and I was just like, no. So yeah, this was not great, and the reading experience wasn't great. But yet at the same time, I'm not going to say it's a bad book, because it does have an audience, and it's going to have a great audience. It's got 3.74, which is not bad, but it didn't hit. And the main character was just a whiny little bitch, and that's a terrible thing to say about a guy who is, just trying to do his best, I guess. No, he wasn't doing his best. He's a whiny little bitch. And the narrator just gives him such a whiny voice. It's so annoying. So I'm not going to say I don't recommend this. Give it a go. See what you think. Let me know. Let me know if you have read this. I'd really love to know, because to get 58% of the way through and still not finish makes me feel really bad. But I'm going to have to write this up as a review on NetGalley, because it is on my NetGalley at the moment. And I'm going to have to say, did not finish. I got 58% of the way through, and the narrator was incredibly good. A really great job. But just didn't sound like he should have been the one narrating a fantasy adventure. I feel like he would do really well with contemporary, maybe rom-com type stuff. And that sounds really bad, because you can't just pigeonhole someone like this. But that's kind of how I felt. So yeah, I would love to know if how you feel about it, and if I should still give Ben Alderson and the Lord of Eternal Night a go, because everyone who read it said it was great. But I feel burned. Because I was expecting this to be great. This was a 5-star. This was supposed to be a 5-star read. That was part of the series. There was the 5-star predictions, and it was a DNF, and it threw everything else off. So yeah, not great. The last one I'm going to talk about that I'm going to actually show here is Bathhouse, just as a quick mention, because I have started it and not gone very far with it several times. As part of my 12 and 12, Katie recommended it. I actually tried reading it in 2022, and I didn't include it because it wasn't really a DNF, because I was still planning on reading it. And I will probably still plan to read it at some point, but yeah, so it's not a DNF as such, but it's you tried this several times and it didn't happen. But I think mainly it's because when I tried it was at the same time that I was reading Heir to Thorn and Flame, and that just threw off everything, absolutely everything. I mean, I didn't even take part in Manga Freakathon properly. All of October was a mess. Half of September was a mess, and I kind of blame it on this. Just not good. There was a few other things that I did read. This was like my giving a go to things. Just Friends I had a wee go at, Anhaga I had a go at. Human Omega, discovered on the slave planet, I had a go at. The remaking of Corbin Whale, I had a go at. These are all ones that I'm like, you know, they're all around the same time. I was obviously looking for something to listen to while I'm doing other things, and it just didn't hit. And then his Cocky Valley, I had Valet. Do you say valet? I say valet. Is that terribly French of me? It's the British way of saying it, which is actually French, but it's probably not. Yeah, so there's different times of the year that I've been trying to listen to things, and listening really does help when I'm in a bit of a slump. And then I just reread stuff, which isn't great. So yeah, there's been a few things that I have DNF'd this year. Yeah, these are the definite DNFs from previously, but my currently reading, they will be migrating over to DNFs. But I do feel like, yeah, I'm gonna have to DNF that one. There's definite DNFs here. There's some currently reading that I'm just going to continue to keep up there. And then there's a few that I wouldn't mind going back to at some point, which is why I still have these up here, because when you've read over 50% of a book, you kind of feel like you should go back to it and finish it at some point. So yeah, this is my DNFs for 2023. Kind of a bit of a weird video, this. Very kind of ranty in some respects, but also just being honest. What I goal for 2024 is to DNF, but with confidence, with authority, with this isn't hitting right now, and the reason why I'm not enjoying it is this, and I'm dropping it at this point in time, and I may come back to it, or I may not, depending on my reasons. But I want it to be like before a 25%, you know, like 10%, 15%, you know, like really quite early on in a book. I want to just be like, no, this isn't for me, or no, this isn't for me right now, and just let it go and put it on my maybe DNF shelf or currently reading, and just see what happens. So yeah. We will see with the next video as well. I hope you enjoyed this year in BL review video, just looking at DNFs or DNFs for now. Yeah, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.